Real men die hard. St. John the Philosopher here. Whether exposed by the Me Too movement or evidenced by 90% of the prison population, it's not hard to find examples of men behaving badly. A shame for sure, but most people wouldn't characterize it as typical of the men they encounter throughout their lives. According to modern feminist theory, however, violence, oppression, rape, these are the natural outworkings of maleness itself. Well, I've got a lot of problems with that idea, and in this video, I'm going to counter it with the greatest action film of all time, Die Hard. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. If you go by the hundreds of articles online about the topic, masculinity is the pervasive problem plaguing civilization, and it needs to be stamped out with extreme prejudice wherever it's found. Corporations, universities, the Boy Scouts, the Scouts, even elementary schools. Nowhere is safe from the plague of masculinity, not even movies. And no other corner of entertainment is as demonstrative of these problems as action movies, particularly the ones from the 80s and 90s. I mean, come on. Between Schwarzenegger's flippant quips, punctuating acts of intense violence,
let off some steam, Bennett.
Stallone's incomprehensible war cries, and Chuck Norris's beard, those decades marked the pinnacle of Y-chromosomed monsters ruling the box office with testosterone-fueled rage. Or at least that's how a lot of modern ideologues would assess things. Oh, these movies surely do celebrate masculinity, but typically not the toxic kind. Just like with any number of other topics, ideologues turn the failings of a subset of a group, men in this case, into the reason why the entire group suffers from some systemic moral failure. In truth, the reasons behind the success of the action movie formula are rooted in the notions of a heroism that are hardwired into the human spirit. We love to see the good guys acting with reckless abandon in defense of something greater, in pursuit of justice, willing to spill blood for what's right, their own and others. And if we're honest, most of the time when we think of that hero, he's male. Now that's not because we think less of women, but because men are simply built for it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My contention is that the so-called toxic masculinity of action movies is not toxic at all. And my prime example is Die Hard. As much as the primitive part of our brains tells us that Die Hard is about gun battles, fistfights, and explosions, it's actually a story that affirms the best expressions of manhood: duty, hard work, loyalty, love, and devotion. Right from the opening shot on John McClane's wedding ring, the movie tells us exactly what this whole thing is really all about. John is a husband first. To be fair, though, we also see the gun right away, and sure, it's a clever way to slip in the exposition of John being a cop, but it also tells us something about him. He's a cop no matter where he is. He's always ready to protect and serve. And then there's the giant bear of love. It's an over-the-top gesture in place of what he really needs to do to set things right with his wife, but we really don't get to the meat of that whole issue until the limo. Somewhere along the line, wife and mother Holly goes to work for the Nakatomi Corporation. Man's man John, a New York police officer, doesn't think much of it until her career takes off. And now John is faced with a choice to either support his wife and move to California with her, or be a macho a-hole and park his butt in New York while she leaves with the kids.
Why'd you come with her, man? What's up?
Because I'm a New York cop. I got a 6-month backlog of New York scumbags I'm still trying to put behind bars. I can't just pick up and go that easy.
John tries using a rehearsed excuse, the good fight he fights for the sake of New York. He's a warrior with dragons left to slay. It's generally admirable, but in this case, absolute bullcrap, and Argyle calls him on it.
In other words, you thought she wasn't gonna make it out here, and she'd come crawling on back to you, so why bother to back, right?
Like I said, you're very fast, Argyle.
John understands that he's made a mistake. I mean, his wife and his kids are everything to him, and he let them slip through the fingers of his clenched egotistical fist. But this is a movie, of course, so he's still got a ways to go to learn the lesson. Everything we see before the terrorists show up clues us in to John's problem. All the things he perceives as challenges to who he is as a man. Holly's success in the business world and the financial benefits of it. The high-class nature of her world versus his, exemplified by the watch.
Show him the watch.
Later.
Well, go on, show him. What are you, embarrassed? It's just a small token of appreciation for all her hard work. It's a Rolex.
The respect Holly gets from her peers.
We closed a pretty big deal today, and a lot of it was due to Holly. Am I right, JoJo?
And the fact that she's done it apart from John, typified by her use of her maiden name. Now, that little bit is also a clue as to the seriousness of their split. Again, John knows this is stupid.
That's great, John. Good job. Very mature.
When the bullets start flying is when we really see it. This is the part of John we're rooting for, the part that fights tooth and nail. Firstly for his wife, and second for a group of people he doesn't know or even like.
Hans, Bobby, I'm your white knight.
I mean, look how fervently he pleads for the life of the sleazy cokehead he knows is gunning for his wife.
Hans, this asshole is not my friend. I just met him tonight. I don't know him. Tell us these people are going to kill you. Tell them you don't know me.
This is the masculinity we admire. And it's the part of John Holly admires as well.
John.
John. He can f this whole thing up. What does he think he's doing?
His job.
She knows that no matter where he is, whether New York or LA, he's going to be a cop. He's going to do something about problems that he sees. It's something she loves about him. And it's also something that he's been denying in order to justify planting his feet on the East Coast, when he knows darn well he could do just fine on the West. In the movies, the main character is often hampered by the lie he tells himself. For John, there are two. First, for Holly to rise, he must diminish. Now, this is so stupid as to not really need explanation. The second lie is the one we're really looking at, that he can't be himself outside of New York. And that's taken apart throughout the film. At every turn after his arrival, he's complaining about LA.
California.
Not that there isn't plenty to complain about.
Come out to the coast. We'll get together. Have a few laughs.
But in his budding friendship with Carl Winslow... I mean Sergeant Al Powell. John finds a kindred spirit of sorts.
You got any kids back on your ranch?
Yeah. 2. Sure hope I can see him swinging on a jungle gym with Al Jr. someday.
Well, now that's a date.
It tells him he wouldn't be alone out here.
Anytime you want to go home, you consider yourself dismissed. No, sir. You couldn't drag me away.
That loyalty, though. Now, here's an interesting moment that exposes the strangeness of the world we currently live in, where masculinity is viewed with fear. In this instance, the roof is wired to explode with the intent of killing everyone there. John knows this, and he tries to get everyone to safety. But it's not until he presents himself in a mean and scary manner, firing into the air, that anyone responds. It seems strange that anyone might complain about how threatening his behavior appeared a few moments earlier, but that's the kind of thing we'd see today. No matter how actually beneficial masculinity is, the fact that it can appear threatening at all is enough to make it forbidden. Now, and then there's the lengths to which John goes to do what needs to be done. The man literally walks barefoot through glass. Throughout the movie, we watch as he's covered in sweat, dirt, and blood. Byproducts of the immense work he puts into doing what he's supposed to do, slaying dragons, freeing captives, and rescuing his maiden. He's the mythical hero in a modern context. By the time we reach the climax, he's a downright mess. In some ways, he's off-putting, but we love him for it.
Jesus.
Hi, honey.
That said, we need to back up to the real climax of the movie. The character moment they slipped in while we were distracted by blood and gunfire.
I want you to tell her that. Tell her it took me a while to figure out what a jerk I've been. That when things started to pan out for her, I should have been more supportive. And
here, where a man exposes his heart, as he should, finally coming to grips with the way he's misused his masculinity to the detriment of his wife and his children.
She's heard me say I love you 1,000 times. She never heard me say I'm sorry. And I want you to tell her that, Al. I want you to tell her that, John said that he was sorry.
But you can tell her that yourself. You just watch your and you'll make it out of there, you hear me?
John's on the verge of tears here, raw and exposed, expressing himself with a male friend even, who doesn't piss on his emotions, but validates the sentiment because he understands it too.
Tell her that, that she's the best thing that ever happened to a bum like me.
This right here, this is masculinity. And so's this. Doing the job of being a real man isn't always pretty. In fact, it's hardly ever pretty, actually, but it's always sacrificial. Notice how even now, John's instinct is to shield Holly with his body. See how Al, sacrifices his personal hang-ups about pulling his gun. Even freaking Argyle possibly sacrifices his job to do the right thing. So when all is said and done, as the papers fall like a white Christmas in Los Angeles, Holly gratefully validates John's sacrifice with her own.
Al is my wife, Holly. Holly Gennaro.
Holly McLean.
Hello, Holly. You got yourself a good man.
If you haven't seen Die Hard in a while, I encourage you to give it another watch with all this in mind. It's a great watch. To the larger point, all this is to say that masculinity isn't the problem. Children naturally engage in the type of play that mimics necessary realities in adulthood. Lion cubs, for instance, pounce each other. They bat at each other's faces and play bite anything that moves. It's cute. Adult lions pounce on their prey, take lethal swipes at other animals seeking to take their meal, and use their fangs to tear off life-giving chunks of meat for their young offspring. Things aren't much different for humans. You ever watch a little boy play with blocks? It seems almost the minute he understands that he can set the blocks on top of each other to increase the size of his structure, he's determined to build the tower as tall as he possibly can. Heedless of the laws of physics, good architectural design, or aesthetics, his tower rises pretty much straight up. Sure, it may fall down once or twice in the process, but he eventually learns when his creation has reached its zenith. And once it has, only moments after the last block has been laid, he knocks it all down in his best Godzilla impression. The master builder has become the unstoppable force of destruction. None of this is taught. None of this is culturally constructed toxic masculinity. It's part of the essential nature of what it is to be male. It's written in our DNA. We are made to be both builders and destroyers. But that energy needs to be properly directed. A young man can choose to build a drug empire and destroy families through his violent nature, or he can choose to build a life with a young lady and destroy any threat to his children. What the modern feminist theorists do by demonizing all masculinity is cast the essential nature of boys in such a light as to make it irredeemable. Masculinity isn't toxic. It's an essential part of human culture, and we need more of it, not less. The results of fatherless homes should be evidence enough for that. So do your part. Men, be a role model, a good example of manliness, and a positive force in the lives of everyone you come in contact with. And women, seek out these good men and let them know you appreciate what they do for you, for your children, and for society. Today's culture seems to be trying to kill off real men, but real men die hard. Tell me what you think of this video. Let me know what you think about my take on masculinity in society. What do you think about the movie Die Hard? Best action movie ever? Discuss in the comments. In the meantime, be sure to like, subscribe, and share for more videos on religion, culture, and politics. That's all for today. This is St. John the Philosopher. Goodbye, God bless, and I'll see you in another video.